As of September, short-term rentals like Airbnb and VRBO are dead in Halifax. Under the new legislation, which will start on September 1st, short-term rentals, which is defined by the province as anything that's 28 days or less, will only be allowed in commercial zones, or if it's in your primary residence, it will be allowed in a residential neighborhood. So if you're running an Airbnb in a residential neighborhood, it now will have to be, as of September 1st, in your primary residence, or if you're in a mixed use or commercial zone, that will be allowed, but it will have to be registered with the province. So I'm going to get into some more details on this shortly, and I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of this new legislation. But before I do, I would be really interested to hear what you think. Are you for this new legislation or against it? Feel free to comment below and get some dialogue started down there. And if you're getting any value out of this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And that way, this will push it out to more people like you that might be interested in seeing content like this. And it will make sure you don't miss any of my future content. And if you have any questions about the Halifax real estate market, or if you're looking to learn more about the buying or selling process, you can book a call or a meeting with me anytime in the Calendly link below in my description at a time when it's convenient for you. So as of September 1st, a lot of homeowners are going to have a tough decision to make. Do they keep this property and bring it back to the long-term rental market, or do they sell their property and take out the equity that they have currently? Now, it's important to note that a lot of these Airbnb owners were probably making a lot more monthly cash flow doing a short-term rental than a long-term rental. So if they are looking to bring it back to the long-term rental market, they're likely going to be pushing the most rent that they can. So it's not likely to be an affordable housing unit. If it comes back, it's probably going to be the opposite, a very expensive rental unit for a long-term rental. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of this new legislation. And honestly, I do see both sides of the coin here. I see both arguments, and I do think there are some pros, but there's definitely some cons here as well. Okay, so getting right into it, let's talk about pro number one, and that is it's going to add potentially some units back into the long-term rental market. Now, honestly, I don't see this as something that's going to help the affordable housing sector directly. I think a lot of these units coming back to the long-term rental market are going to be priced extremely high. They're going to be looking to push the rents as high as they can because they're losing out on what that short-term rental market income would have been. And most of these units in this kind of Airbnb and VRBO space are renovated units, and they're probably going to be at a premium rental number for a monthly rental. Now, according to city staff, there's about 2,000 of these Airbnb units in Halifax, and about 1,350 of them are operating in residential zones that will likely be converted back to long-term rentals if those owners decide to do so. So this could potentially, have a big influx of homes coming back to this space, which is definitely helpful as we have a 1% vacancy rate here in Halifax. But is it going to be enough to shift the rental market as a whole? No, it's not. But even if only 100 or 200 units of these come back to the long-term rental market, it will be seen as something that makes a little bit of a difference, at least an impact in some way, shape, or form. But is it going to transform the whole housing market and rental market here in Halifax? No, it's likely not. Moving on to pro number two, it's going to bring back a sense of community in some of these residential neighborhoods. Now, over the last few years, there's been a lot of chatter in the media about this, but a lot of people in residential neighborhoods do not want an Airbnb or a VRBO as a neighbor. And the reason is, the influx of people always coming and going, they don't like it. It doesn't give them a sense of community with having no real true neighbor. And oftentimes these people, as we know, are coming into the city maybe to party for a weekend or something like that. So it's causing disturbances of noise and partying and all these types of things. But, neighbors in general are not usually pro having an Airbnb as a neighbor if they're living in a residential neighborhood. Someone was quoted on Tuesday night in the council meeting last week as saying that this does affect their neighborhoods as well, and it's starting to feel like their neighborhood is less of a community and more like a hotel development. And pro number three, it's going to provide more concrete data to our province surrounding what our rental housing market looks like. So that was the main reason for the province doing this in the first place, and implementing that rental registry is so that the province can have more accurate data of what the true rental landscape looks like in the years to come. Now, like I said, although there is some pros to this situation, there's definitely some cons as well. So moving on to the cons, number one, this is going to directly affect our tourism. Now, as we know, a lot of these short-term rentals, such as Airbnbs, are loved by tourists, and they're used frequently by tourists, especially in the busy season when hotels are often at max capacity here in Halifax. A Discover Halifax study that was presented to council on Tuesday night at the meeting talked about how much this is going to affect the tourism industry. And with the loss of approximately 75,000 rooms annually. They're estimating that that could affect the province's tourism economic activity by $49 million. Now, I don't know about you, but this is going to cost the province a lot of money to implement in the first place. And now with this lost revenue in tourism, I do not see that as a pro. It's definitely a major con to what we're seeing with this legislation being implemented. Now, moving on to con number two, too much regulation. So this is going to affect a lot of people and not just, these big corporations. This is going to affect everyday people that are running these types of short-term rental units. Now, although this legislation should not be a surprise to anybody, as they've talked about it for years and it actually started coming down the pipeline last year, the reality is this is going to hurt a lot of locals. So not only the property owners themselves that are running these short-term rentals and that depend on this type of financial income monthly, but there's also a lot of work that's going to be lost because of this. So people like property managers, cleaners, and so on. So to give you an idea, there were two property managers that were at the council meeting last week, and they were talking about how one of them operated 11 buildings and about 9 of them were probably going to be shut down because of this new legislation. And another property manager said that they operate about 100 units throughout the city and they employ about 50 people overall between cleaners and booking people and so on. So not only will this hurt the property owners that own those properties specifically, but it's also going to put a major hole in the pockets of a lot of property managers and other industries as well. And last but certainly not least, let's move on to con number 3, and that is that we're skirting around the real issue. The real issue of our housing market and our rental market is the lack of supply based on the demand that we have. And the reality is, while this legislation might push some homes back to the long-term rental market, it's not going to be enough to fix the problem in total, and it's really just biting off a little tiny piece of it. So the reality is I don't see this landscape changing for quite some time because we simply cannot build the supply quick enough for what we need in terms of the demand here in Halifax. So my goal with this video overall was to give you kind of the pros and the cons and both sides of the coin here and let you decide, what do you think about this legislation? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's going to help the rental market or the housing market in Halifax? And are you pro or against this legislation? I would love to hear what you think down in the comments below. And I'm truly interested because I think there's going to be a lot of argument for both sides here in general going forward. Personally, I'm not truly in favor of this. I'm not operating any rentals in myself that are short-term rentals. I have some clients that do it, but it's not kind of a make or break thing in their overall portfolio. But overall, I think the cons kind of outweigh the pros on this. I think that it's going to really hurt our tourism industry, and I think it's really going to hurt some of our local property owners and our local business owners as well, such as property managers and so on. But at the same time, I do see the pros and I do understand why they're doing it, and I'm not surprised that they're doing it as I've been following this for quite some time now. And the reality is it doesn't really matter what I think because as of September 1st, this is happening. So if you're a property owner that is running these Airbnbs, you need to be aware of this and you need to act accordingly and make a decision of what you're going to do going forward. Now, if you're still here watching and you got any value out of this video, all I ask that you like and subscribe so it helps push this out to more people like you that might be interested in seeing content like this. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support and have a good day.